I'm not sure how many of you are following this channel that early that you remember this slide, which I've shown more than a year ago, I guess, regarding the state of NIO, where it is, what's coming to the future. And so I think it's time to kind of do a recap and also point out where are we standing right now, because I'm having the feeling that 2022 could be a huge year for NIO, and I'm going to explain why. So back then I pointed out that we have just jumped the gap of bankruptcy. NIO was almost not going to survive, but then going into a new phase of so-called business validation, where they should show positive margins, sustained demand, and releasing new models. And I would say it's really hard to argue that NIO has just really done this. They have shown dramatically improved margins. Really surprising actually how fast they have hit double-digit vehicle margins, but also gross margins. They have shown 100% year-over-year growth in demand and deliveries, and actually recently, just with the chip shortage, that are kind of supply constrained and still growing a lot with a sustained demand. And of course, they also released new models like the ES6 and the EC6. Now, if we update this chart, I would say that NIO is now in a transition to growth. So NIO is not really yet in this growth phase where everything comes together, like NIO Live, NIO Battery as a Service, more than 100K annual deliveries, the NIO Pilot, so the autonomous technology, and going global. We see kind of the first things to happen in each of one of these sectors, but it's not there yet. And also some of the things we need to scrape off the list, like the JAC Hycan, the venture, which wasn't really successful, where NIO is kind of exiting, but having plans of entering the mass segment maybe in another way in the future. And so I would argue we are just here transitioning between those two periods. And so although we have high growth rates right now, this is of course very early in terms of the scalability, still below the 100K possibly for this year, I would say so. And so I think the best thing really is to come in the next 2 years or so. And I guess this is also why we see some of those things that are happening in the background, which are now talked through. First off, let's talk about some upgrades and innovations on the manufacturing side. So NIO has just recently actually upgraded new robots in the factory, in the current factory, and thereby improved the current line by 20% output, but also made it possible to start with the double shift, so basically doubling the capacity once again. And here, this article, which I posted in the Patreon community, is also around a new manufacturing process regarding large-scale die casting parts. And this is similar to something that Tesla has done before with the Model Y, being able to use the GigaPress of making one big part for the car body in one piece. And now NIO is the first Chinese company that basically can also do such kind of a production process. So stamping one piece of the car body, all of it heat-free. So that's the innovation here in the process here. And that helps to have a faster production process, more efficient, but at the same time also less carbon emissions. And this also helps to counter the perception that NIO is not innovating in terms of R&D and the manufacturing process. It thereby also has room for improvement of the vehicle margins and is really innovating here in terms of the manufacturing side, although it is still in this partnership model with JAC NIO, but preparing here for the future models to use also these new types of production processes that will be faster, more cost efficient, and of course here also innovating in terms of the sustainability. Now, another important piece of the puzzle before going into full scale is on the infrastructure side, namely the battery swapping stations, which NIO has now started to build out rapidly. But now we see more and more details also how this will actually turn into an energy system. Today's news around that photovoltaic will be used on top of the roof of those kind of swapping stations. So they have a new partner, Unisun, which will scale and build out the battery swapping stations in order that they can use solar to charge the batteries that are in the battery, in order to use solar to charge the batteries that are in the swapping station. And so this will become a really important piece of the city infrastructure in terms of giving some of the excess capacities into the grid, and also help to cycle the demand, but also use renewable energy in order to load and charge the batteries before they are swapped into some of the cars. And I said it before in a video that I think it seems like NIO has a pretty big focus on the infrastructure for now, because for one, it helps them to also diversify from competition. Not many are really building infrastructure on their own. Tesla is, and then the next big one should be NIO, besides the state grid that is accessible to most brands. But then also noticing that the more swap stations you have, this actually helps you to get more sales, because people are watching it, they see some of the benefits of that, and also it helps also with the branding aspects, and thereby also building it now before more cars are on the road makes a lot of sense during this chip shortage, where particularly the supply constraint on the manufacturing side may slow down the deliveries for a bit. But the fact that this deal was just done today also tells you that this is still pretty early stages with what these swap stations will do in the future in the city environment. Furthermore, we have the topic about the standardization of battery swapping in China being used by other industry players as well. Famously, we have Geely, which is starting to use their own battery swapping. I've actually reached out to Geely and confirmed that the standard that they are going to use is not the same as NIO is going to use. However, NIO is just one of those players, the most important players actually, that has defined actually the industry standard that will first be used and applicable in China, but possibly also, and I talked about this, coming to Europe, coming to America in the future. And without having further information as of now, I do think that NIO will not only benefit in case that somebody else is using the exact NIO system, which will be possibly a very unlikely case, because of course NIO also doesn't want to mix up the branding with other brands, but will also receive royalties and licenses in case that other manufacturers are starting to use the technology in the vehicle, but also build their own stations which possibly need patents that NIO has secured before. And so this is also still early on the infrastructure side and how these swap stations and standards can be used, as well as on the vehicle side, where we have now the news that NIO Day will take place at the 18th of December in China. And we will hear around the ET7, of course, the launch, and possibly another model, the ET5. And maybe even one more surprise model, we'll see. But the important thing here is that this marks the release of the new vehicle platform that will possibly also get an upgrade to the current models, the ES8, ES6 and so on. And what I'm expecting from this is more efficient vehicles in terms of the energy consumption, improved functionalities in terms of the autonomous driving features, and just in general a huge upgrade both on the hardware and software side of NIO vehicles that will be rolled out across different models. First, of course, with the ET7. And so you see, even though it sounds like a lot is happening already right now, but if you look closer to it, it's like most of it is still so early, like in the preparation phase, if you will. And that's why I think 2022 will be really the decisive year for NIO, where we will see breakthrough after breakthrough, hopefully manifesting in each of those segments, like the infrastructure, the vehicle technologies, the vehicle sales, also the software side, and of course also on everything else regarding the business model of battery as a service on the e-commerce side, on NIO Live and stuff like that. All of these things are still not coming together as of now, and we still see all of these different initiatives taking place bit for bit, but it takes more time. And so this is why I'm personally actually more excited about what's going to happen 2022 forward than what will happen like in November, December and so on with, let's say, the sales numbers and stuff like that. This is, in my point of view, just the short-term stuff that needs to happen anyways. But the really juicy stuff is, I think, coming later on, and that will be only the growth phase. And afterwards, years after that, we will actually only go into reaping the fruits of becoming a cash cow in terms of the free cash flows, possibly turning also into profitability on an annual basis and stuff like that. So yeah, from a NIO shareholding perspective, it's really exciting times in my point of views. Let me know down in the comments, what are you most excited about currently? and where you're more critically possibly as well. And then please smash a like and see you in the next one.